Hey everybody, welcome back to Big Brain History. Today we're reacting to the weirdest jobs in history. There have been some really weird jobs in history, so I'm sure he's got some really good ones picked out for this video. It's only 3 minutes long. I will do my best to add to it as best I can. Um, but if you want to see the original video, I will leave a link in the description below. So go ahead and check them out. It looks like a really fun video, but let's hop into it.
The weirdest jobs in history. Number 7. Human alarm clock. Before alarm clocks were invented, people hired knocker-ups, individuals who tapped on windows with long sticks or even shot
Who wakes them up? If they never wake up, does anybody wake up?
peas at the glass to wake their clients up. They walked the streets before dawn, making sure factory workers and bakers got to work on time. Some heavy sleepers needed extra effort, so the wakers kept shooting peas until they woke up. Interestingly, some of these human alarm clocks even had their own knocker-ups to wake them first. Number 6.
But who woke those knocker-ups up first?
Whipping boy. Being an English or French prince had its perks. You could never be punished. But instead of getting away with bad behavior, the punishment was outsourced to a whipping boy, a kid who got beaten on the prince's behalf. The idea was that watching his friends suffer would make the prince feel guilty and start behaving.
Or it creates crazy sociopaths that have been in history all over the place. That's ridiculous.
As you might suspect, it probably didn't work. But hey, at least the whipping boy had a job. Number
I wonder why royalty throughout history had such a big problem with empathy.
5. Leech collector. Back when doctors thought bloodletting could cure anything, leeches were worth their weight.
Fun fact about bloodletting, that was used for centuries, many centuries. And in fact, it killed our first president, George Washington. George Washington may have survived if the doctors had just left him alone. Instead, they bloodletted him to death. And it's funny because George Washington's last words, supposedly, were the doctors were bloodletting him to death. And they asked him, "How are you feeling?" And he said, "'Tis well." And then they bled him to death. Yeah, bloodletting was used for many, many years. They thought it was a way to cure the body because you were getting the bad stuff out, which is stupid because the blood is the good stuff that you want to keep in your body. But they used it for many years. Fortunately, it didn't always kill the people they were bloodletting. They just wouldn't bleed them to death. But in some cases, and in some really important cases like George Washington, they did do it until they died.
In gold. That's where leech collectors came in. These guys made a living by walking into swamps and letting the little bloodsuckers latch onto their legs. Once they had gathered enough passengers, they'd carefully peel them off and sell them to doctors for medical treatments. It was like
So leeches, I don't think are used in any medical things today, but I do know maggots can be used because maggots do eat infected flesh, and dead flesh. So I've heard of medical professionals using maggots in cases, but I'm not a medical professional, so if any of you are medical professionals, please comment below and educate us how maggots, if they are used in modern medicine. I'm not sure, but I do know in history they did use them.
fishing, except you were the bait. Number 4. Imperial human chess piece. Imagine standing still for hours, dressed in elaborate robes, waiting for someone to move you. That was the life of a human chess piece in the Chinese emperor's games. No talking, no sitting, just standing there, hoping the emperor wouldn't take too long to make his next move. And if you got captured, well, that's when your acting skills kicked in. You had to collapse on the spot, dramatically pretend to die, and then lie there like a defeated pawn while the game carried on. Number 3.
All right, about 2 weeks ago, I went to Panama City Beach, Florida, and they had a medieval festival there in this city, and they had a royal chess match just like this, where everybody was pretending to be a pawn. One guy was pretending to be the king of France, the other guy was pretending to be the king of England. They did a really good job taking the French accent, by the way. It was pretty good. But yeah, they would act it out just like they did. They would march people around, and then if two guys were on the same piece, they would have a duel, and then whichever piece lost, which was always the piece that should have lost, he would pretend to get stabbed, and he'd go, "Oh," and he'd fall on the ground. It was very entertaining. I get why they did that back in medieval Europe.
3. Resurrectionist. Back in the 18th and 19th centuries, medical schools needed dead bodies for dissection, but there weren't enough legal ones to go around. That's when resurrectionists stepped in, people who made a living sneaking into cemeteries, digging up fresh corpses, and selling them to scientists. Some got so into the business that they skipped the whole digging part and just started making their own cadavers. Looking at you, Burke and Hare.
Hey, that is initiative. That's taking initiative for your job. That caused a lot of problems for a lot of people in history, especially in 18th, 19th century America. We actually had I believe he was a congressman. He was the son of a president whose body was stolen, and they found him hanging on a rope in, I want to say it was, I don't remember where it was at. I think it was a hospital. But they were looking for his body, and the police noticed a rope hanging in the air vent, and they pulled on the rope, and it was the body of a congressman, which is kind of crazy. His body had been stolen right after he was buried, and then they found that guy's cousin. I believe they found his body pickled in the basement of the University of Michigan. A lot of people were worried about this. They started putting fences around graves. They would start putting concrete slabs on top of coffins under the ground. They were hiring bodyguards to try to protect bodies because hospitals were paying a lot of money for any cadavers they could get. So everybody was looking for a way to steal a body, and the fresher the better. So people were hiring guards to try to stand guard over bodies for just a couple days until it got old enough to where they probably wouldn't steal it. It's a really interesting problem, and a lot of people don't know about it, but resurrectionists, that was a really gruesome issue that they had.
Number 2, professional mourner. Back in the past, funerals weren't just about saying goodbye. They were mostly about the drama. That's why families actually hired trained professionals to cry at funerals. The more intense the performance, the more it emphasized the significance of the loss. These experts could wail on demand, throw themselves on the ground, and even rip their clothes for extra flair. Nothing says they'll be missed like a bunch of strangers bawling on cue, right? Number 1.
So I don't know if I guess they still have professional mourners. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do know in North Korea when Kim Jong-un's father died, their funeral was a huge staged event, or his funeral was a huge staged event. As the body was being carried down the streets in Pyongyang, all of the civilians were lined up, and there was thousands of them lined up along the streets. And if you watch the video footage, which is still on YouTube, you'll see people just bawling and screaming, and just, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. It almost looks like they're in physical pain. And the belief is that they were acting so dramatically because if they didn't appear sad enough, you might be disappeared, and you might have the same fate as your leader. So I guess you could say a lot of people in North Korea have to be professional mourners if their leader dies, because it is either you make them believe it or you die yourself.
Groom of the stool. Believe it or not, one of the most important jobs in the English royal court was helping the king go to the toilet. The groom of the stool didn't just assist with the process, he also wiped the king and kept track of his bathroom habits. The weirdest part? This wasn't some bottom-of-the-barrel servant job. It was actually a super prestigious position, giving the king's personal butt wiper serious political power.
Yeah, so I actually made a short about the Groom of the Stool. I'll link it in the description below. I did it like a year ago. Groom of the Stool, it's a really gross job and people laugh at it now. But if you were alive during this period in English history, you'd really want to be the Groom of the Stool, because in many ways he was the second in command behind the king, because he was with the king when the king was most vulnerable on the toilet. So the Groom of the Stool was someone the king could really trust. So if you were Groom of the Stool, you were the most trusted man in the kingdom, and you would be with the king more than most other people. You were privy to a lot of conversations that a lot of other people couldn't have, and you were trusted to make a lot of decisions and do a lot of action. So Groom of the Stool, you may be a butt wiper, but you had a lot more power than that. It was a really sought after job, and people would really, really push to try to be the guy who could wipe the king's butt. But yeah, I really like this video. I really love his animation and his humor. I think it was really great. I'm going to watch more of his videos. But like I said, if you want to check him out, I'll leave the link in the description below. And I hope you guys liked the video, and I will catch you all in the next one.